Nations do not have rights, people do. Rights of all people to self-determination. It is not the Arabs that have denied Jews the right to rather exist, but it's actually the opposite. The terminology of Israelis' right to exist is constantly employed in order to undermine the fact of the Palestinian rights. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Loaa Mohammed, and I'm going to be the Prime Minister for today's debate. Now, to start with, in order to better understand the motion today, we'd have to examine the factors of a one-state solution. Now, by one-state solution, we refer to a resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through the creation of a unitary, federal, or confederate Israeli-Palestinian state, which could encompass all of the present territory of Israel, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. So by that, we are assuring two things: a federal governing. By that, I mean that the Israel and Palestine, as one state, are going to have one constitution in order to bind them all. Yet, each state has a law of its own. Ladies and gentlemen, this House believes that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict calls for a one-state solution. Now, the United Nations became involved in the conflict when the British tried to extricate itself from Palestine and wash its hands of the volatile situation its policies had helped to create. As a result of the United Nations Special Commission on Palestine, it was created to examine the issue and offer its recommendation, according to such, on how to resolve the conflict. Now, the UN scope contained no Arab representatives. It issued a report that explicitly rejected the right of the Palestinians to self-determination. Now, this would lead me to my first point, which is that separation is unrightful, and so one must maintain a one-state policy. The United Nations General Assembly endorsed this in its resolution 181. Now, it petitioned Palestine and provided Zionist leaders with the legal mandate to actually subsequently declare their existence as a separate state. Now, all such claims are absolutely false. Why? Number one, the United Nations General Assembly is not legally binding. The only part of the United Nations that is legally binding is the Security Council, and so such claim is false. Number two, the United Nations resolution, which is 181, merely endorsed the UNSCOP's report and considered it as a recommendation. Now, in order for such recommendation to be actually accepted, it has to be accepted by both the nations, Israel and Palestine, which was not. Another reason to why such claim is false. Now, leading to my second point, which is why we should maintain a one-state policy, because the land belongs to the Arabs and the Jews together, but with certain proportions. And dividing such lands is going to be unfair for both of them. How? Now, the Arabs' population are greater than Jews. Jews only constitute about a third of the population, which is 11% of it as a whole. Now, the land ownership statistics from the 1945 conclude that the Arabs in Jaffa own 47% of the land, while the Jews own 39%. Now, it might sound like a big percent, but when you actually see all the states in Palestine, 39% is the largest percent occupied by the Jews, meaning that every other percent that is actually there in Palestine belongs to the Palestinian people and not the Israelis. And so dividing such states is completely unfair for both of them. Again, leading to my point that we should abide by a one-state policy. Now, the United Nations recognized for more than 0.5% of the Palestinian land to be given to the Jewish state in case they are actually separated. Now, this is one of the reasons to why such division is unrightful. Why? Because, as we said, that the proportions or the land itself belongs majorly to Palestine, and actually taking half of that without the consent of the people is completely unrightful. Again, the maintenance of Israel as a state on its own, if a one-state policy is not to be achieved, is danger to Palestine and danger to the neighboring countries. How? Now, the two-state solution is implied. Zionist leaders, such as Ben Gurion, would say the following: after we become a strong force, as a result of a state creation, we shall abolish partition and expand the whole of Palestine. The Jewish then would have to preserve order by machine guns if necessary. Now, that's a very clear statement from a Zionist leader that if such partition or such separation happened and a policy, a certain state policy was not to be abided, they are going to use violence. Now, A point I mentioned earlier is that the right of Israel to exist actually is used by nations like Israel and United States and England to actually cover up for the malicious things that Israel has been doing so far. An example to that would be Israel's implementation of ethnic cleansing. About 700,000 of Arabs were forced out of their houses. They fled out of fear from further massacres. Now, this has been allowed, they have the right to be allowed by international law. But because of Israel and because of the situation that it has actually implied in the state, they are not going back. They cannot go back. And so if Israel was given the right to be a state of its own and the one-state policy is not to be implied, they are going to abuse it. Now, the US recognition of Israel's right exists. They acknowledge the things they have, but they do not acknowledge the rights of the Palestinians. The rights of Palestinians to life, the right to the land, and the right to actually employ whatever they have in order to pursue their culture, their religion, their ethnicity. A 15 years of conflict, campaign to end the occupation, and establish a state unified, going by the one-state policy, is the only plausible path to peace, a better life for both people, a realization of the Palestinian national aspiration, and an end to the righteous conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, through my speech, I've discussed why a one-state policy is the best policy that is to be administered, because it guarantees the rightful integration of both lands, it guarantees the equal rights of Palestinians and Israelis, and it works in order to stop or put a stop to the Israeli abusing Palestinians in terms of power, land, and ethnicity. Thank you so much.